Road. Good afternoon, everyone. It is time have came that we call Council County Board of Commissioners meeting to order November the 15th, 2021. Please join me in a moment of silent prayer. Also, think about Chairman Owens, who's supposed to be kind of sickly today. And after that, please join me in the presentation to the.
We can't hear you back here.
You can hear me now? Yes. Okay, I'm sorry. I said, we are taking, go with me in a moment of silent prayer and think about Chairman Owens and join me after moments of silent prayer, presentation to the flag. Thank you.
The pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda, we public comments, and I just want to thank everyone for coming. And you will be limited to 3 minutes. A lot of people's on the agenda for to be heard on public comment. So I'm going to limit it to 3 minutes, and 30 minutes will be total. So please join me, and when the flag goes, please recognize your time is up. Thank you. Call the roll.
The first person to speak will be Tom Vernon.
Just state your name.
My name is Tom Vernon. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. I was born right about half a mile away or less from this very spot in Dr. Quinn's clinic. So I am a native of Caswell County. One of these days I hope to move back here. I've come here tonight to speak for those who have no voice. And that group of people are the Confederate soldiers of Caswell County who never came home and lie in unknown graves. The following names that I'm going to read are just a handful of the people from Caswell County that fought in the war between the states. And as far as I know, these people did not come home. I'd found 44 names on the roster of Company A of the 13th North Carolina, which was known as the Yanceville Graves, that died during that war and lie in graves wherever, probably on the field of battle, unmarked. Lieutenant Wiley Robertson, George Boswell, Martin Brentsfield, H.A. Chandler, Joseph Dupre, G. Wilson Evans, Elisha Fitzgerald, Obadiah Fitzgerald, Felix Graves, Sergeant John Graves, Sidney Hall, Basley Harrelson, Charles Hawkins, Thomas Petit, Henry Richmond, John Robertson, Thomas Sawyers, Joseph A. Sink, B.G. Stadler, Thomas Stone, Hezekiah Summers, Henry Thompson, John Totten, Thomas Totten, Thomas J. Turner, William Vaden, Corporal Henry Walters, and Wilbur Womack. I didn't read them all. There's 44 people out of one company in the 13th North Carolina that didn't come home. The statue on the square across here is not there to intimidate anybody. I truly believe that with all my heart. It's not there as a symbol of Jim Crow. It's there to honor the Confederate soldiers who came home and who were still living at the time that that statue was put up. Is that 3 minutes? I ask you, please do not take that down.
Next, we have Ed Clarke.
Well, y'all know my name. You know why I'm here, and it's not to make new friends. It's to protect that monument. Now, when will it ever be enough to satisfy a group of people who don't know their own history? We will never dance around the flagpole singing Kumbaya. It will never happen. You won't be able to satisfy liberals. I got kinfolk I recently found out that live in North Carolina. And I'm proud of these Confederate soldiers who tried to stop an illegal armed invasion by the great emancipator himself, Abraham Lincoln. That war left us with what we've got today. Reconstruction from the carpetbaggers made a mess of everything. And they're trying to take these monuments down because they're still trying to cover up real history. The only thing I can tell you is if you'll get in there and study, you'll find there's another story than what these vile U.S. history books say. So I'm standing in defense of that monument. It deserves to stay there because it has another story to tell. And that's all I've got to say.
Next, we have Shannon Wharton.
I'm sure the magnitude of this decision is not lost on anyone. That's probably why some people are so upset. It's common knowledge that after the Confederacy failed, local leaders formed a new ruling power, the Klan. Their goal was to intimidate Blacks and prevent them from voting, holding political office, or establishing successful businesses. They used violence and other intimidation tactics, but they also used the power of local, state, and federal policy. These people did not simply disappear, and not all of them wear hoods. Some have taught our children, and some have made our laws. Recently, to intimidate this board into dropping the redesign of Court Square, several groups threatened to descend upon our community with their guns and their flags. Individual board members have surely been aggressively harassed and threatened. If that wasn't the case, I probably wouldn't care about that chunk of concrete. If county employees could advocate for racial equity training without people calling for them to be fired, I wouldn't care about that statute. By the way, 57 years after the civil rights legislation, there's still no mandated equity training in this county. Maybe if there were, the statute wouldn't matter. If our community was healthy and flourishing, I probably wouldn't care about that square. But here's the thing, we're not. we're struggling, some more than others. And contrary to what social media might tell you, it's not due to the presence of Section 8 housing or solely based on one's work ethic or other behaviors. No, it's that good old boy system everybody loves to hate. That good old boy system has worked for generations to develop and implement racist policy and practices for their own personal gain and to maintain control over everyone else, including working class whites. Their policies and practices hurt us all, but many bristle at the words racism or white supremacy. And because of that, many refuse to consider the continuous harmful ramifications of these systems. If we were willing to address all that, I might not really care about whether that square gets redesigned. But at this point, after the threats that have been made to this board and this community, it's a matter of principle. We must relocate that statue to send a clear message that Caswell County is done being intimidated, controlled, and harmed by the Klan and a bunch of Confederates.
Okay, our next speaker will be Allison Lancaster.
Allison Lancaster, and I reside in Yanceville, North Carolina. As a minister, I think a lot about loving our neighbor and what that looks like. It involves seeing all the people, listening to the stories of wounding, and doing what we can to ensure that that wounding doesn't continue. I stand here before you and confess that I personally have a long way to go on that front. But what I have learned is that there is more than one way to view and interpret something. For many of our brothers and sisters, the statue down on the court square represents a history and a heritage of slavery, brutalization, and stripping of dignity and humanity. It is a constant reminder for many that they don't belong to God, but instead are the property and playthings of men. And I humbly and I respectfully ask you, is this really what Caswell County wants its legacy to be? To keep something that harms so many in such a public and elevated place is not loving our neighbor at all. When I first moved here, I noticed the sign that adorns the street as you come into Caswell County, preserving the past, embracing the future. A town square designed in such a way that captures the contributions and the talents and the dreams and the aspirations of all who live here, including people of color, would put teeth to the claim that we embrace the future. We do not need to forget our past, but that doesn't mean that we cannot look at it with a critical eye and make changes to ensure that we do not continue hurting our neighbors. In fact, looking at our past, learning from it, and moving forward in ways that promote liberty and justice for all is the best way that we can honor our ancestors and those who fought and died. When we do this, we preserve the very heart of our past, the tradition behind all traditions, the narrative behind all narratives, which is the constant working out of what it means to be free from one generation to the next. Let's let our town square add something to that ongoing conversation for the generations that are to come. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Thomas Goddard.
My name is Thomas Goddard, from Danville, Virginia, but I actually just bought a farm on Walters Mill Road. Moving there in about a month and a half, with my family. With my business also, that up to the day is now over 1.5 million in sales. I'm hoping I'm not making a mistake by moving here. Once again, I'm from Danville. We just went through this 5-6 years ago. They took a small flag down at a museum. What happened? 15 flags went up around Danville. They have flaggers out every Saturday now at 1 or 2 different locations. Several council members in Danville that voted to take it down has made public comments that they made a mistake. They wish they did something a little bit different. What I just handed out was 3 counties in Virginia had this on for vote in November to take down their monument. They let their people vote. And as you can see, all 3 voted to leave the monument up. One was 80% voted to keep it up. One was 75% to keep it up. The other 67% voted to keep the monuments up. I mean, that's just a sign. This, 2 years ago, they had it on different counties in Virginia. They all voted by 70 and 80% to leave the monuments up. I'm hoping, once again, me moving here, moving my family, moving my business to Walters Mill Road is not a mistake where y'all are going to disappoint me by taking down a monument that was not put there to intimidate anybody. And the first lady, one of the first ladies talked about how the community needs more money. Moving that monument, as y'all have all found out, it's going to cost a lot of money. And it's not just moving that monument, it's moving the other monuments too. The money that y'all going to spend to do that could help the community in other ways, as she was talking about. So once again, I'm going to be a voter here soon, and I'm hoping that y'all will show me to vote for y'all by doing the right thing and leaving the monument standing. Thank you.
Next, we have Jessica Reeves.
Good afternoon, I'm Jessica Rovis, and I'm also from Danville, Virginia. My ancestors have served in all conflicts in U.S. history. My great uncle followed his brothers off to war and served in Korea. His plane was shot down. Some say it was enemy fire and some say it was friendly. He was part of the 10 Madness Patrol Squadron, serving as an aviation electronics 3rd class in the Navy. His body was never recovered, along with all of his brothers in arms. My family only received a folded flag and heartache. There is a stone memorial in Honolulu, Hawaii, with his name inscribed on it, along with his rank. My great-grandfather blamed himself for influencing his younger brother into the military. When will they protest the removal of the memorial in Honolulu, Hawaii? When will they offend someone there that has no connection to this memorial? When will they protest for its removal from public sight? The Confederate memorial outside also stands for our dead. It memorials their sacrifices that they gave against the invaders who tried to conquer North Carolina. It also stands for those who were left on the battlefield, those who were thrown in ditches and wells, and those who were left on the battlefields for the animals to scatter their bones. Many families lost their loved ones, and some of their bodies were never found. All they got for their loss was a Confederate memorial, just like the one outside, that made up for their headstones that they never got to set for their dead. The war was not about slavery. North Carolina did not give her sons to die for rich plantation owners so that they could keep their slaves and to keep their sons off the battlefields. It simply does not make common sense to die for something that does not benefit your family. When an invader is trying to kill your family and destroy your home, you cannot run from this, but instead you must fight. Would you stand by and watch your children starve to death right before your eyes? I'm tired of the attack on our Southern cause. Everyone takes the gospel, what they read and hear, without doing their own research. The history of the Southern land and its people is very unique and a lot to discover, well past the slavery band-aid that everyone wants to put on everything. You will be fascinated with traditions, and you will have a lot better understanding of the people you are demonizing. Remember, it's not the poor. Remember, it's the poor who fights the wars while the enablers feed from the fats of its casualties. The victor always tells the loser's story, and the story of our Southern soldiers has us, the descendants, who fight for their honor. Julius Cornelius Watlington was killed in 1863. He is one of my uncles at the Battle of Charlottesville, or Chancellorsville. My ancestors are buried right down the road from here in a family plot. He served in Company D on the 21st North Carolina Troops. He was only 26 years old. Thank you.
Next, we have Pat Moore.
Hang on.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Pat Warren, and I live at 36 Main Street, Prospect Hill. I come before you to speak in favor of redesigning the town square, including the removal of the Confederate statue. The historic courthouse, its surrounding yards, and the town square are defining focal points, not only for the residents of Caswell County, but also for those who visit our beautiful and unique county, whether it be for business or for pleasure. The entire area speaks volumes about who we are as a people and as a county. Rather than serving counter to these purposes, the town square can become a positive reflection of all of the citizens of Caswell County and a place where all of its citizens can stand proudly. I cannot speak to the cost of redesigning the town square because a cost analysis for the project has not been authorized by the Caswell County Board of Commissioners. It is reasonable to conclude, however, considering the defining power that the town square holds, that leaving it as it is today will be much costlier in the long run than taking the necessary steps now to assure that the town square reflects the uniqueness that binds us together as one people. I am respectfully requesting that the Caswell County Board of Commissioners authorize the development of a town square redesigning proposal and a cost analysis for the proposal. Thank you for your service to our county.
Next, we have Ms. Ernestine Hamlin.
Good afternoon. My name is Ernestine Hamlin, and I stand before this board to ask you to move forward on redesigning the town square. Speaking as a concerned citizen of Caswell County, We are not asking you to destroy it. We're not asking you to tear it down. We're not asking you to remove it. We are asking you to relocate the Confederate monument along with all the other monuments. Keep in mind, the Civil War was not on your side then, and it's not on your side now. In the month of June this year, 2020, this board approved a budget of over $36 million with a total of over $23 million in the general fund. Therefore, make no mistake about it, this county can afford to redesign the town square. This county cannot afford to put dollar before human life. There have been threats made about the removal of the Confederate monument, and that alone should tell this board of commissioners that this is a safety concern. And at the beginning of this meeting, you stood and you pledged allegiance to the United States of America, and you sit down and defend the Confederate. We are asking you to consider placing the monument in temporary storage or temporary relocation or in a museum. The monument has become a divisive issue for this community, and it is in the best interest of the community to relocate the monument and redesign the town square. It is time to live up to the town's motto, to preserve the past and embrace the future. Thank you.
Next, we have Jerry Sykes.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for your service. My name is Jerry Sykes. I live at 896 Alpha Sparkle Road, Yanceville. I was provided with a copy of the minutes that goes way back to when this thing first started. I got the last couple of months, had a lot of good time spending on it, reading about it. And tried to understand what kind of went on with it and laid it out. And the whole thing come down to racism in the statute. When it come down, I saw one of the commissioners had mentioned systemic racism in his comments before the vote was taken in July 6th of 2020. He mentioned systemic racism 13 times. There's no doubt this is a racial thing. It was moved at that meeting to remove the statute. It was second and a vote was taken. The vote boarded 5-2 not to move the statute, not to remove. That was distinctly in there. And it was put in there again. Mr. Owens put that in there later. Webster defines remove as take away or off from the position occupied. I want somebody to tell me how you can relocate something without removing it. What followed, though, after that was numerous calls, numerous letters, comments. It's all in the minutes. Some of them, many of them were words, in so many words, accusing the commissioners, especially the white members on the board, of racism. That was clearly, it's in the minutes. All you gotta do is read it. Seemed like this is kind of a pattern that you see all over. It's kind of a cancel culture pattern. If you don't like what's going on, and you don't believe the way I do, then there's no debate. It's that you're wrong and you're a racist. That's the way I feel about it. You get called that if you don't believe the way certain people feel. I don't think that's right. Now I got a question I'd like to ask you. But I want to ask y'all something here. If what's going to happen 20, 30, 40 years down the road? Y'all probably not here. Successors will probably be here maybe. And this group's come before you and say, let's tear down Vietnam Memorial. And right now you probably say, oh no, that's not going to happen. It's probably not gonna happen. But they're teaching in our colleges and universities now about US aggression, Vietnam War included, and other wars. These groups, now your successors, likelihood that one of your successors or all the successors may come from some of these colleges that are teaching these courses. That US aggression is a bad thing, that somehow or another we caused all the stuff, all the problems in the world. They're gonna come before this board at some day in time to remove those other monuments. How are you gonna vote then? Are we gonna continue with this nonsense, just tear down everything because somebody don't like it? Or we're gonna just bear on? And one thing I would like to say, one thing, just the final thing, but the word treason was used. I just want to say I'm offended by it. It was used a bunch of times, even by some of the commissioners. And I'm offended by that. It was never convicted of treason. Thank you.
Next, we have Wanda Miles.
I didn't come here to try to divide anybody, to try to make anybody hate anybody. I think there's enough of that going on. But to me, that statue has been standing there.
Excuse me, I didn't get your last name.
I'm sorry,
I didn't know.
Wanda Mize.
Wanda?
Mize.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, is it not working either? Or am I not talking loud enough? Okay, oh yeah, I can hear myself now. Anyway, what I was saying is, the statue, as of this past September, has been there for 100 years. And I'm sure most of us have ridden by it and never gave it a second thought until these past couple of years. And I was never taught that it was a Confederate soldier. I was taught it was an unknown soldier. And to me, that stood for both sides. That was for everybody that fought in the war, the ones that didn't come home or the ones that did come home but never really got to leave that awful war. And if we're honest, the war was not started over slavery, it was started over taxation. They were wanting to tax the South to the point that we were dead, we were dying, we were starving. And the history books do not teach the complete history either. Yes, there were black slaves, but there were also white slaves, the poor people. Not everybody was rich. In fact, if you go by the number of people that owned slaves, it was a very small majority. And if I had lived back then, I would have been a slave because I don't have any money. I wish people would stop trying to cancel everything and just try to see it from someone else's point of view without arguing about it. There's too much hatred. I wish people would just talk again. That's all I really have to say.
The next person that signed up is Nels, N-E-L-S, maybe Nelson. Can't make out.
I'll give the speech, I just got it out about, be like 2 nights ago, prepared my speech for you.
Okay, the next person would be Charles Blackwood.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Charles Blackwell, and I reside at 190 Wall Street here in Yanceville. I had no desire to speak tonight because I've spoken numerous times since we started this process over a year ago. But I couldn't sit here and listen to some of the things I heard and not have comments to make. First of all, we do know history, and that's why we're here. The same people that voted 70 and 80% in Virginia, and we know that Danville was the last capital of the Confederacy. We do know that. Those same 70 and 80%, if you asked them if they wanted to vote for slavery, they'd be voting for slavery today, and we'd be back in slavery. What I want you to do now is to take yourself back 100 years. Yes, the statue has been here 100 years, 100 too many years. I want you to take your minds back to that day when it was being dedicated. I will imagine that in a county where at least 50% of the population is African Americans, that the few of them in attendance are there in a position of preparing and serving food. Although they've been out of slavery for nearly 50 years, their condition of servitude is very similar to that which had existed during slavery. They never got the 40 acres and a mule as promised by the assassinated President Abraham Lincoln. As a result, they are primarily sharecroppers on former plantation owners' lands and are barely generating enough income to clothe and feed their families. For most of them, they are unconscious of the ceremony which is occurring in honor of the Confederacy. They're in the fields harvesting tobacco crops, and many of the women are in the households of white families, cleaning their houses and raising their children. The fact that the statue has been created and is being dedicated on this day is not in and of itself an indication of an evil intent or negative will. The descendants of Confederate soldiers certainly deserve the right to memorialize their dead soldiers in preserving their history. The travesty of the matter is that they decided to do so by imposing its presence now for 100 years on a great community that was comprised of African Americans who would have had no desire to honor the statue. To add insult to injury, this dedication was taking place during a time in which African Americans were being lynched, denied the right to vote and to obtain political power, and denied economic opportunities. Most blacks were still being worked to death and being cheated out of recognizing any benefits from the results of their labor. And as noted by Dr. Harry Watson, distinguished professor of Southern culture at the University of North Carolina, putting up these monuments was an indication of the white South taking a victory lap. Basically, niggas stay in your place. So let it be known that there is no time limit on correcting a past mistake. Castle will never fulfill this destiny until a change comes to this county.
Last person to speak will be Tony Lundy.
Gentlemen, appreciate giving me this opportunity tonight. I want to say, I don't believe for 1 minute that there's hatred or the Klan that put the monument up. You have a little old lady that's putting it up because their son died, because they lost their husband, because they lost their husband or lost their brother or lost their son. That's what the monument's about. It's a local, it's basically Yanceville County's equivalent of Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. If you would allow the democratic process to take its place and have a referendum, and I don't believe that y'all would do that at this point, but if that were to occur, in Virginia, we just had 9 referendums, and I could read them all off, but we have limited time. But I will say that the least victory with the Confederate monument staying where it was, won 9 out of 9. If we'd had 30, we would have won 30 out of 30. We won overwhelmingly, a landslide in each county, some as much as 85-14. The least one was 56-43. That was the least one. So overwhelmingly, and I just can't believe that anybody in here would believe that 85% of the people in that county was racist or had hate in their heart. People realize that this is who we are. It's who we are as a people. In many cases, that's our people fought an invasion. They fought an invasion. At that time, it was illegal to do what happened. And a young man who fought defending their homeland. And that was not put up out of hatred. It was put up for all the people that never made it home. And to move that now would be a very much a disservice to not just those veterans, but to all veterans. And I just wish that, you know, instead of, if you want to honor the motto of this county, don't take that down. Put another one up. Put something up, you know, share it. You got plenty of space out there. Put another one up if that's what you need to do. But don't take that one down, because all you're doing is hurting people. And what I see nationally, it's basically a bunch of communists. It's a communist-driven effort, and it's a leftist effort. And they're trying to hurt this country. They're trying to hurt the heritage of this country. They're trying to destroy this country. That's at the base. Now, there are probably good people here tonight on the other side of the fence from me who don't have that motive. But nevertheless, the people starting this nationwide, the people pushing this nationwide, they're up to no good, and they're up to destroying this country. And you can look every day and see what's happening. We better get our act together quick, and we better do everything we can to save our history and our heritage. Thank you.
Okay, now we will go to Parks and Recs, the overflow. We have some speakers there. The first person there is Walter Michael.
We have 4 people about Rex, so we're going to listen to them too. And before we listen to them, I just want to thank this group here for obeying the rules and going by what we set aside. Thank you very much. The one Parks, you heard me? You want to come forward and state your name?
You can speak, Mr. Michaels.
Can you guys hear us okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
You can speak in, sir. Name.
Yes, my name is Walter Michael, and I represent myself and my wife, Cynthia Michael. We live in the Cherry Grove Road area, and we would just like to voice our opinion about the statue that is in our square. My wife is Native American. She's proud that she's Native American, and there's been atrocities throughout the history for most non-whites. We just feel that it would be a travesty to lose the history that's sitting in our community. We need to remember. Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker will be Temple Powell.
Hello, commissioners, staff, and fellow citizens. My name is Temple Powell. I'm a resident of Caswell County in the Shady Grove area, just off of Shady Grove Road. I oppose to the redesign of the square for the following reasons. First of all, from a teaching perspective, I actually have over 7 years teaching experience, so cumulative of high school and collegiate levels. So I'd like to say that removing the statues is removing a visual aid. Children and adults as well, we learn from both some people learn better by hearing, others learn better by seeing. So from a teaching perspective, I would like to say that removing the statues, you're removing a visual aid of history that represents our history. So I'd like you to consider from that perspective. Also, in my opinion, this is a waste of taxpayer money, which can be better spent on perhaps our local and volunteer fire departments, and the terrible traffic problem that we have between the intersection of Park Springs Road and Highway 86 and the 86 Convenience Mart at 7631 86 North, among other things. I am very concerned about, I'm very concerned about this board's lack of transparency regarding the 2019-2020 budget audit that has yet to be made available for public inspection, as well as the actual cost. So as far as like for this year, about proposing the actual cost of redesigning the square. With all due respect, commissioners, please remember, certainly you have heard from many perspectives today, and I just say that we just need to work together, and also remember you do represent us. You don't represent special interests. You represent the people of Caswell County. Thank you.
Next, we have Angela Fountain.
Good evening, County Commissioners. My name is Angela Fountain, and I too would like to see the redesign of the town square and standing with those that have stated it tonight. We're speaking up and standing up in regard to this matter because we can no longer sit down. We're not just speaking on removing a man made of stone, because when I look at him and when you look at him, we don't just see a man made of stone, but we see that it was intended to continue to represent that one man should be greater and dominant over another, regardless of how many years come and go, considering that this statute has been set in place since 1921. The very purpose of reminding all people that one man still reflects that they should be superior over another man. This is not just a man of stone that we are requesting to be taken down, because surely who can rightfully condone that one man should be greater than another? Who can condone that this statute is really stating that one man still, no matter what field, that they should be superior to another man? We are all God's creation. The stone is dead, but now is the time for the man that represents what this stone is standing for to
Ma'am, please hold on a second. Your mic is going out. If he has changed your mic, you can try to speak. We couldn't hear you before, but maybe we can hear you now.
Okay, I'm not really sure. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'll just start back with, we're not just speaking on removing a man made of stone, because when I look at him and when you look at him, we don't just see a man made of stone, but we see that it was intended to continue to represent that one man should be greater and dominant over another, regardless of how many years come and go, considering that this statute has been set in place since 1921. The very purpose of reminding all people that one man still reflects that they should be superior over another man. This is not just a man of stone that we are requesting to be taken down, because surely who can rightfully condone that one man should be greater than another? Who can condone what this statute is really stating, that one man still, no matter what, feel that they are superior to another man, when we are all God's creation? The stone is dead, but now's the time for the man that represents what this stone is standing for to let go of the hatred, let go of the racism, let go of the supremacy. We all know it's not really about history, a Confederate statue. We don't remember our history through a Confederate statue. So is it really just about just a part of history? And we all need to make sure that we are not becoming dead enough, that we don't recognize when something is causing another man agony and pain.
Your time is up. Next, we'll have Richard Fountain.
Richard Fountain.
Could you speak up, sir?
I said, good evening. My name is Richard Fountain. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm here with my wife, who's a pastor. We're standing together on removing of the Confederate statue or stone. I think it's time to let go of the guardian, who's guarded Yanceville for over 100 years. It is time to remove him. Let us remove the statue. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes the speakers at
This happened, and public comments, and I thank you for coming, and also thanking you all for participating in the program tonight. Next on the agenda will be recognition. I will call the roll. Commissioner Carter, you have anything? Commissioner Carter, you want? Okay, let's move on. Commissioner Dixon.
Yes, I have a recognition I would like to make. And this young lady here is 5 years old. And for her birthday, instead of asking for gifts, she wanted donations to the animal shelter. And you see what she was able to accomplish. And I would just like to acknowledge her as Aubrey Mims and say thank you to a job well done.
No. Commissioner Armstrong? Okay. Commissioner Bay? And Commissioner Hunt, are you there, Irvin?
Yes, sir. I have no recognition.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Jefferson. And next on the agenda will be vote on need a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, before we move forward, I'd like to make 2 amendments to the agenda. I would like to add a resolution finding that there is substantial inequality in population among electoral districts and redefining electoral districts as number 7 on the agenda. And I'd like to add a closed session, North Carolina General Statute 143, 318.11.a, parentheses 3, to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between attorney and the public body, which privilege is hereby acknowledged.
Mr. Collins, you back? Did you hear the amendment? Could add it to the agenda? But then, Mr. Collins, I see his face, I'm saying. I asked you. Mr. Collins, do you hear me?
Do what? Do what?
We made 2 adjustments to the agenda that kind of match. Are you agree?
Commissioner Carter, do you agree with the 2 amendments that were made to the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Dixon, are you ready?
Yes.
Mr. Hawk, are you agreeing to the?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Mr. Owens?
Yes.
We're just gonna go with the consensus. Okay, I need a motion to approve the agenda as it's been added to. So moved. Motion made by
Second.
second by.
Please speak into the microphone.
Okay, motion was made by Rick and second by Hall. All in favor, in comments, all in favor, vote saying aye. Bill Carter, did you hear the motion? Okay, Mr. Dixon, you have the motion. Aye. Commissioner Owens?
Aye.
Aye. Motion been approved. Next, you know, consent.
What do you vote on?
Next on the agenda will be the consent agenda to approve. I'll need a motion for that. November the first, and payroll policy. All that, I need a motion. So to approve. The motion. So moved. Motion made by Rick. Second. Second by Mr. Hall.
We can't hear that.
The motion made by Rick, second by Mr. Hall. All in favor, voting by calling the roll. Bill Carter. Dixon. Hall. Ostrander. Mr. Owen. Rick, Jeffries. Motion carried. Okay. Next thing we got on the agenda, I just want to stop and say one thing. That we have been working on this statute and not on the statute redesigning the square for almost 2 years. You know, we can't keep on fooling ourselves. No, just talking. I hope you heard me very clearly. I think it's time to let the people know, are we gonna vote to clear the square? Or not? I mean, you know, we keep going and telling this and this coming up, another coming up. It's time to stand up to the plate, gentlemen. And I'm gonna take an actual motion to be made to move, to clear the square. I'm gonna put that on. We've been fighting, go around, but it's time for us to stand up to the plate.
Mr. Chairman, when we amended the agenda, we moved the resolution to number 7. So if we could take care of that now and then move into the discussion on the redesign of the court square after we do the resolution.
Okay, well, Mr. County Manager, just want to read the resolution.
Commissioners, on November 1st, the board voted to approve the electoral districts in version P6. The following resolution is an official expression of the opinion, the will, and the approval of the Caswell County Board of Commissioners of those districts. Whereas the Caswell County Board of Commissioners is made up of 7 members, and whereas the purposes of nominating and electing members of the Board of Commissioners, Caswell County is divided into 5 districts. And whereas 1 member of the Board of Commissioners is elected from each district and 2 from Catholic County at large. And whereas pursuant to Article 1, Section 2 of the United States Constitution, the United States Census Bureau conducted the decennial census for the year 2020. And whereas the 2020 census data is reported in Public Law 94-171, And whereas the Board of Commissioners has reviewed the census data concerning the total population of the county and the total number of persons residing within each of the districts. And whereas following its review of the census data, the Board of Commissioners has determined that there is substantial inequality of population among the districts. And whereas pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 153A-22, the county is authorized to redefine the districts if it finds that there is substantial inequality of population among the districts. And whereas the Board of Commissioners considered the issue of redistricting in a number of its regular and special meetings held since the census data was released. And whereas the Board of Commissioners conducted a public hearing to solicit public input on proposed redistricting plans after the census data was released. And whereas the county desires to redefine the boundaries of the current districts based on the census data after substantial consideration, deliberation, and opportunity for input from members of the public. And whereas the Board of Commissioners is committed to honoring the purpose and intent of that certain order on final judgment filed August 4th, 1989, in case file number C-86-676-G and C-86-708-G in the United States District Court for the Middle District of North Carolina, Greensboro Division, by assuring African American citizens in Caswell County have an equal opportunity with other citizens to participate in the political process and elect representatives of their choice. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners as follows. Section 1. The Board of Commissioners hereby finds as a matter of fact that there is substantial inequality of population among the districts as presently drawn. Section 2. The Board of Commissioners hereby redefine the boundaries of the districts according to the boundaries shown on the electoral district map attached hereto as Exhibit A, which such exhibit is incorporated herein by reference. The Board of Commissioners seats which are to be filled at the initial election held under this resolution are as follows. District 1, District 2, and District 5. Section 4. Pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 153A-22F, not later than 10 days after the day on which this resolution becomes effective, the clerk is hereby directed to file a certified copy of this resolution with the following persons or offices: the Secretary of State's office, the office of the Caswell County Register of Deeds, and the chairman of the Caswell County Board of Elections. Section 5. This resolution shall take effect immediately upon its adoption. Adopted this 15th day of November, 2021.
These districts are wrong.
Thank you. Y'all heard the resolution, the board, what pleasure. Thank you, Master. You heard the resolution read by the county manager, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the resolution as written.
Motion made by, I'm striking to adopt the resolution, I guess. Second by Richard Gray. Call the vote by calling the roll. Mr. Carter? Did you hear it? All right, thank you. Mr. Dixon?
No.
What is it? What is it to approve a resolution or disapprove it?
Mr. Carter, it's to approve the resolution.
Okay.
Approve the resolution.
Yeah, I approve.
Commissioner Arnold?
Aye.
Mr. Jeffers? Okay. Well, we go back to where I started at. I think it's time, that we need to come up with an answer to the people. We owe this in the county. So I'm gonna ask the board, one by one, if they have anything they want to talk about or say, now's the time. Because I'm gonna ask for most people to take it. stand up to be a man of a man, you go to be a man. Do you hear me now? Well, I'm gonna call for a motion. I'm gonna ask these commissioners to feel like what they want to say, if they have anything to say before we ask for the motion. Mr. Carter.
Well, first thing I think we need to do is find out what it's gonna cost. You know, I've been asking that question for about a year now, and nobody has ever gave a report on what it's gonna cost to move the statues. Nobody has never gave a report on the cost of redesigning the square, and I think we need to have a cost figure on what it's gonna cost to do both of these. You just can't do it without a cost. Then we got to see where the money's gonna come from.
Mr. Dixon, you have anything you want to say, please?
Were we gonna get an answer on the cost before I make my comments?
Well, if you want to know the cost, I'll explain about that. Mr. County Manager, you have the cost already.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the cost is, to relocate and simply to relocate, the cost would be $48,000. And that's just to relocate. That does not include a redesign of the square.
Y'all would buy a whole new PA system for that.
Have you finished?
Is that, Mr. Manager, is that $48,000? Is that for moving one monument or all of them?
That's for removing, relocating all of them.
And that's not counting.
So, Mr. Chairman, I've prepared a statement, if you'd like for me to read that. That's a little historical perspective of how the board got to this place and the actions taken by the board up to this point.
Maybe need to stay where it is.
Pardon? Yeah, I'm prepared to do that now if you'd like. So, Commissioners, on June 15th, 2020.
No, ma'am, I'm just waiting, but I'm on a meeting right now, so I've got to come in. I'm doing a sleep study tonight.
So, Commissioners, on June 15th of 2020, Commissioner Jeffrey stated that he thought the board needed to have some serious discussions about the statute as to what, if anything, the board should do. He requested that this item be put on the next agenda. The item was added to the July 6th agenda. Commissioner Hall moved, so seconded by Commissioner Jeffries, to remove the statue from the square. After a roll call vote, the motion failed by a vote of 5-2. After many public comments over the next few months, the board directed me to place the discussion back on the agenda because there had not been an adequate discussion about the redesign of the courthouse square held during the initial conversation on July 6th. On October 19th, 2020, the board took up the discussion about redesigning the court square again. The recommendation was that the county engage in a facilitated discussion about the monument and the possibility of removing it, as well as concurrently engaging an economic development firm to assess the highest and best use to attract economic development to downtown Yancey. After discussion, the chairman directed me to come up with a plan and form a group to go through with the plan that was discussed. On November 30th, the board directed staff and necessary boards and committees to pursue the redesign of the square, with the first step being developing a plan to relocate all monuments, and that plan would include location, cost, associated aspects of the relocation, and include strategic community input. After a roll call vote, the motion carried unanimously. The board engaged in a survey that did as had been directed, pursue the redesign of the court square. The survey asked questions about potential relocation places for all monuments located on the square, as well as other questions suitable for the survey. Several petitions have been received by the board, both for and against removal of the monuments. Comments have been received about the potential relocation sites and about the authority the board has to relocate any of the monuments of remembrance. The general statute, NCGS 100-2.1, protection of monuments, memorials, and works of art that governs the relocation of objects of remembrance states, an object of remembrance that is permanently relocated shall be relocated to a site of similar prominence, honor, visibility, availability, and access that are within the boundaries of the jurisdiction from which it was relocated. An object of remembrance may not be relocated to a museum, cemetery, or mausoleum unless it was originally placed at such location. As used in this section, the term object of remembrance means monument, memorial, plaque, statue, marker, or display of permanent character that commemorates an event, a person, or military service that is part of North Carolina's history. The circumstances under which object of remembrance may be relocated are either of the following. The second option in the general statute for relocating objects of remembrance is when necessary for construction, renovation, or reconfiguration of buildings, open spaces, parks, or transportation projects. The board recognized that the left side of the Yanceville County Courthouse would provide a currently publicly owned place with similar prominence, honor, visibility, availability, and access. The board also recognized NCGS 100-2.1, protection of monuments, memorials, and works of art, when necessary for construction, renovation, or reconfigurations of buildings, open spaces, parking, or transportation projects, as adequate legal authority to renovate the court square and relocate all monuments. The board directed staff to determine the cost of relocating the monuments to the board's recognized site that provides for similar prominence, honor, visibility, availability, and access. Tonight, I'd like to present the board with a quote for the relocation. The relocation of the monuments will cost $32,946. Associated foundation demolition and site preparation would cost an additional $15,000, totaling approximately $48,000. The county would also be required to provide appropriate security for the work. Street closures should be taken care of by the county, which includes the entire court square, as well as the entrance to the back parking lot across from the fire station. The tree canopy needs to be trimmed so they would be able to set the pieces from above. That's included in site prep. At this time, work is anticipated to be done during regular working hours. So this would happen during regular working hours during the week. The work would be done in a single mobilization, and they would take all precautions to protect all monuments, but they cannot be held responsible for any damage due to the age of and the possible environmental degradation to the components. Now, as I said, this covers just the relocation of the monuments. This does not cover a redesign, formal redesign of the square. A formal redesign of the square is a separate issue altogether after the fact and would add to that cost. So I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Mr. Miller, is the cost of the sheriff's department or the delay or whatever that would need to happen, is that figured in this 48,000?
No, the security that would need to be provided is not included in the 48,000. There would be no cost associated with street closures.
Do you have a guesstimate what security would cost?
No, I haven't spoken to the sheriff about his people providing security.
Okay. What about the cost of redesigning the square? When you pick this, if you pick this monument up, if you picked it up and moved it to the location that we're talking about or have briefly talked about, is that follow up with the state statutes? Is that written in?
I believe the board would need to take it, my interpretation is that would be a simple relocation. That does not satisfy, in my mind, the requirements in the statute to redesign the court square. But I'll tell you, I'm not a lawyer. So, I think there would need to be additional steps taken.
You think there would need to be additional steps taken?
My recommendation to the board would be the board enter into an RFP for a landscape architect to design a suitable space for the square based on the priorities of the board of commissioners. That would be my recommendation if the board wanted to pursue the redesign.
So we don't have a final cost on all this?
The board does not provide staff with priorities for the redesign of the square. The only thing the board has directed staff to do is pursue the relocation of the monuments. So that's what we've done. If the board wants to enter into discussions about priorities, that's something altogether different. Priorities for redesigning the square.
I think you need to know a total cost. If you're gonna move the statue, it's been out for 100 years, and everybody's getting in a hurry, and I know you're kicking the can down the road, but I think you need to know the entire cost of the project. You're talking about doing part of it, and then when does the rest of it get done? So in my opinion, until you know the cost of the whole project, you need to put this thing on hold. We don't have any idea what that costs.
It's gonna cost a whole lot more to do the reconstruction of the square than it is to move.
Oh, I can't talk to the board.
That's what we're supposed to do.
You know, we, commissioners, redesign square. These are issues. Talking about redesigning the square, yes, that was, they came up to, but we could redesign the square 5, 6, 7 years. You don't have to spend $4,000 just to redesign. 5, 10 years. We don't have to. I think it is right now, I think we need to know, I think the county manager gave us an idea of $48,000 to remove everything off the squares. I'm pretty well right, correct?
That's correct.
Do the taxpayers not have a say in this?
Please.
We
can have a meeting later. As I'm correct, gentlemen?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlemen, I'd like to speak. As Mr. McVeigh said, we're going to vote on an item that we have no idea what it'll cost to redesign the square. Why do we not just split the redesign of the square off of it? And we solely look squarely at the monuments tonight, debate that, and vote whether we're going to move or not. And we can talk about the redesign of the town square.
Why it's a chat, it's open, again, you take back one? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Rick, go ahead.
Do we absolutely know that it's perfectly legal to set this statute right there? Beyond a shadow of a doubt.
We do not. We do not know. I've just get into these issues one at a time. I got a whole lot I'm gonna talk about on it, but we were just on this part. So, no, to answer your question, I guess that's something the county attorney ought to answer because I don't know that. We could wind up getting sued. It may not meet the criteria.
I don't think we can answer that.
Good evening, commissioners. I heard you invoke the county attorney, so I thought I'd offer a few comments here as your discussion progresses tonight. First of all, the county manager, read the substance of General Statute 100-2.12U, and in that reading, he touched on the few exceptions in the statute that permit objects of remembrance to be relocated. And the second circumstance under which an object of remembrance may be relocated is when necessary for the construction, alteration, renovation, reconfiguration of buildings, open spaces, parking, or transportation projects. So I believe these items, the relocation and the redesign, are linked due to the way the statute reads, in my view. Secondly, there was a question, I believe, sort of posed generally, do you know if you relocate it here, that's won't be subject to a successful challenge. And of course, as you all know, challenges come from various places at various times, and we certainly can't control any sort of challenge made. But what we can do is follow the law and follow what the statute says. And we can read again from the relevant provisions with the county, which the county manager has already mentioned tonight. And that statute requires that an object of remembrance that's permanently relocated, which is what's being discussed this evening, shall be relocated to a site of similar prominence, honor, visibility, availability, and access that are within the boundaries of the jurisdiction from which it was relocated. So those are the factors that would be under review should there be a challenge to the relocation. And, obviously arguments all around, but a close proximity, as you've discussed so far, would certainly meet many, if not all, of those factors in the statute. I'm happy to answer any other questions. If I didn't address those that were on the table already, please let me know.
I would want to know that for sure before we moved it, if we moved it, and then have to dig it up and move it again. I want somebody to tell me that that's absolutely fine going like that.
Well, the only
so I can hear this.
In our system of justice, and the legislature makes the law, so we have the law as written. You are doing your best. I know you are, because you've been thinking and looking at this language to follow the law. Ultimately, of course, it's up to the judiciary to interpret the law. So absent some sort of judicial decision, this board is faced with making its best judgment about whether or not it's complying with its obligations under the statute.
County Attorney, are you telling me, or am I understanding you correctly? Let me phrase it like that with no redesign of the square, there is no authority to move the monument. You're saying because there is a redesign project, so they're able to move the monuments because of the construction. But if there was no construction or redesign of the square, then the monument move would not be lawful.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying the two issues are linked in my view because of the way the statute reads. Should the commissioners decide that they are interested in moving forward with the relocation and not the redesign, and you wanted my opinion about that, I believe we could have a conversation about my legal opinion, like we do on numerous topics in a closed session.
I don't like that idea. I would love to have this discussed in front of the actual people in the authority.
I understand, and that's what you're doing. But my legal advice is often provided to you in a closed session, and that's the way that I think that I'm best serving my client.
So, Mrs. Miller.
Okay, we're meeting back in order, please. The first thing I want to say, if you can't be quiet, then actually leave now. You're not going to disrespect us in the law. Now, I'm asking you, kindly, if you can't be quiet, leave now. Okay, we'll go back to what we.
Mr. Dickerson was getting ready to.
Okay, I'm in. All right, let's sit.
Commissioners, actually, I have several things, but I want to get clarification here. We're voting on a redesign and a monument removal or relocation as a package. It's got to be one done deal together or not at all. And we don't know what the cost of the redesign of the square is going to be. That's an unknown. We're saying 48,000 plus other expenses to move the monuments. I mean, I don't want to start throwing zingers out here. And I know last time I compared that to Nancy Pelosi, but you're asking us to vote on something we don't know what the cost is until after we approve it. That's just not a good business practice. So that's putting the taxpayers on the hook for a blank check that I'm just not willing to support. And why are we talking about spending all this money to redesign the square, which I saw this the other day, somebody handed it to me. It's the National Register of Historic Places. Yanceville and the town square, my understanding by this multi-page document, is part of the National Registry of Historic Places. Why are we going to redesign it, tear it down, and spend all this taxpayer money when we should be promoting it for tourism and bringing people in here to see it?
Amen.
I mean, let's try to capitalize on what we have. Preserving our past and embracing the future. Well, tearing up their town square out there and moving their monuments, that's not preserving the past. That's acting like Nazi Germany or communist Russia trying to destroy history. I just can't in good conscience go along with that, but there's a whole lot more I'm going to say on this. Where to begin? We've been touching on the cost, and I've heard several people in here mentioning that, and I'm all about it. I want to protect the taxpayers. But I've heard something else in here, and I just scribbled a few notes, so bear with me. I didn't bring my glasses tonight. But they keep on talking about the cause of the war and going back and forth. And I want y'all to remember something. Victors write the histories. And there's not a textbook taught in the public schools out of that actually goes into what a lot of the details about the conflict involved. And I challenge everybody in this audience, when you get home tonight, I want you to go Google Corwin Amendment. I want you to look at that and then come back and you'll know that this was not a war over slavery. The Corwin Amendment was proposed by a northern senator by the last name of Corwin, and it would protect slavery forever in the Constitution. It actually passed the House and the Senate. It was signed by President Buchanan. Now, the only reason it didn't get the 2/3 majority needed to become a constitutional amendment is that southern states would not vote for it. Think about that for a second. They had it on silver platter. If you want slavery, if that's what the issue is, we will give it to you. They won't. It's like most all other wars. You dig in deep enough, it's all about the money, the overtaxation. The House of Representatives, if you remember from your history classes in middle school, I think they started teaching this, they proposed the spending bills. They had a huge influx of immigrants coming from the potato famines in Ireland and elsewhere across Europe, they were just flocking to them. So every time they needed more money, what did they do? Another agriculture tax. So by the time the war broke out, 4 southern states were contributing roughly half of all the income that was brought into the federal government. So when they announced they were going to leave the Union, surely the North wasn't too happy about it. They were ready to organize an army. But the fact is, for 4 years, they were a separate country. A separate country. No state in their right mind would ever join the Union if they said, okay, once you join, you can't ever leave. So what did the North do? They got really creative about it. They said it's an area under rebellion. And they marched an army down here, and we all know what happened. But so many people don't know the full story. A lot of people did not want to be involved in this conflict. Roderick Lee did not want to be the leader of the Confederate Army. He went with the state of Virginia where he was from. He was asked to be the commander of the Confederate forces. He freed his slaves before the war ever started. He said, no man will ever say that I drew my sword for the cause of slavery. Let that sink in. This man was an honorable man that has been maligned. And as I was at the veterans ceremony on the 11th, I got to thinking about it. I said, you know, it is a travesty because now there's no one here to speak for all these monuments. And I want everybody here to keep in mind, we're not talking about one Confederate monument. We're talking about World War I, World War II, and we're also talking about NLW. Do the people from here, some of you are not from here, I'll throw it out there. He was an African-American educator that was in charge of the school system during the segregation times. He has a long laundry list of accomplishments that he accomplished for the black community. And one of which was he went to an all-white school board and was asking them for the funding to put in high schools for the African-American community. They refused. Well, this was a smart man. He found out a loophole that if he added one class per year, he added 9th, and he had 10th, and he had 11th, 12th, and he by default got the high schools for the African-American community. And by some accounts, talking to some of the older African-Americans around here, he did so well in setting everything in motion that by the time that segregation was being done away with in the school system, some of the African-American people were some of the most vocal opponents of it. They loved what they had, and they loved the accomplishments they had and the grades that they were able to make, and they didn't want to integrate schools. So if you take all that into consideration and look at it, we're doing a disrespectful deed to these people moving those monuments, all in the name of political correctness. I just don't see it. I can't go along with it. And gee. And the relocation will not satisfy. If anybody thinks that we move those 4 monuments over here and put them there, that that's going to be the end of it, trust me. The people that have came in from outside the community that stirred this up, they don't want them relocated. They want them gone. They want them rubble. They don't want them there at all. If it was not with the state law protecting it, we wouldn't even be talking about it at this level. So you're only kicking the can down the road. You're going to spend more money again if you cave into this. This is bully tactics. No, I got a couple more, Jeremiah. This, Mr. Jeffers, if you'll bear with me, like I said, I left my glasses. Oh, people refer to that as a statue out there, and I'm glad that one gentleman here tonight clarified that, and I was going to go into details, but I just want to reflect back on what he said. There are so many men that died, and they talk about being buried in unmarked graves. A lot of them are mass graves. A lot of them never saw graves. They didn't come back home. This was in the 1800s. They didn't have refrigerated boxcars to stick these men in. They fell where they died, and that's where they were buried or where they were left. That is the only gravestone those people had. When they tried not to be involved in the war, and the Northern Army came into the South, you have seen the movies, you have read books, if you look at things from outside of the public textbooks, there was raping and pillaging going on, and these men took up arms to protect their homelands, to protect their families, their children. They had armies coming in on both sides that would commandeer what they had, and these people were just abused. You know, this is an interesting fact. If you want to see some of the best examples of furniture from that time frame, you've got to go up north to the museums up there or private collectors' homes to see most of it, because most of it was pillaged from the south and taken back up north after the war was over with. This is just a travesty. These people have been painted with such a broad brush of racist, when all they did is stood up for their homeland and fought like hell to make sure that their voices were heard and they protected what was theirs. And no, I'm not going to have anything to do with removing those monuments, and I'll be steadfast on that.
I don't want to put someone else on under the microscope right now, but my concern is that, and I'm extremely sympathetic to the folks that feel that that statue represents something that they find offensive. I'm very sympathetic. I've had long discussions with people, and I believe that that's what's in their heart, that that statue offends them. However, in those discussions, I haven't had or heard exactly what moving it will do to remove that offense. I come from an industry that safety was our big concern, and part of that safety was an investigation of incidents. And part of that investigation always involved a root cause. And to me, moving that statue is like putting a Band-Aid on a compound fracture where it came through the skin. You don't treat what the broken bone is that's underneath there. I would propose that, and I'd be very receptive to spending the money to work on the root cause of what the community feels offends them about that statue, and let's call it systemic racism, whatever. I would rather we do that than moving that statue 250 feet to another place where people can get upset about it, because by statute it has to be of equal prominence. Well, if it's of equal prominence, we haven't done a damn thing to fix the problem, in my opinion. I'd rather we spend the money on the root cause of systemic racism than arguing about and getting all fired up about moving a chunk of concrete. I need to be willing to say, let's put up another statue for Martin Luther King or whomever we need to. No. Let's try to find common ground here with people that've got this. Let's find the root cause and fix the root cause. And we're not going to fix this by moving the statue.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, go ahead. Mr. Chairman, I think this board needs to hold this vote tonight. And I think we need to direct the county manager to find out what the total cost on this whole procedure will be. But I feel like moving the statute is related to what it's going to cost to redo the square if we redo it. And I think the board needs to direct him, the county manager, at this point, or the board needs to decide at this point where we want to go with the square, what we want to do with it, how much money we want to spend there. Then we will have the sum of the total product to decide if we want to move the statue. I know a lot of folks are not going to be satisfied with that. This is not an easy process. I think it takes time. I told Ms. Ernestine one time this would be a slow process of moving, and I think you need to combine that square renovation with the whole project.
All right, I heard you. Sure, where you coming from? I heard everyone. You know,
You know, Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna,
yeah, hold on.
run some numbers here by you. You know, you're talking about,
I'm sorry.
Bill Carter here, you're talking about, moving the statues, and then you don't have a cost on what it's gonna cost to redesign the square. About a year ago, we was talking, we was considering economic development, and the economic developer and the county manager and I worked hard on economic development, funding the county airport, which the federal government was gonna pay 95% of, and the cost for the county's part to move forward was $237,000, and the board decided they didn't want to spend that money. And which, if we had built that airport, it could. And the two sites that they thought would be good was the S'more area and the Pelham area. If you built it in the Pelham area with this casino coming, you could have had motels and restaurants, so it could have been good economic development. But I don't understand. The board didn't want to go ahead with that, where it'd be economic development, but yet they want to spend $200,000 approximately on moving statues. It just don't make sense to me where they turn down the economic development. And I can't be in favor of moving the statues.
Why don't you hold the vote and let Mr. Miller see what the total cost is? Like we agreed. That's the best way.
You know, I know the statue has been a big project the last 2 years. We made a promise to these people out here. We did. 7 commissioners agreed to clean the square. That's what we agreed. 7. I know it's going to cost. The cost, the county manager came back with a cost of moving, cleaning the square about $48,000. We don't have to come back and make a big issue out of designing that square. Right. That square can sit there 2 years or 3 years and do local programs. No, it can't. Not according. Listen to me. All right, I'm listening. And we don't have to do that. This is a 10 to 15 program. You know, but as I said, I want to do this to the county manager, y'all agree. County manager will take you 2 months or 1 month to bring back a total price. I'm not worried about designing the square in 2 months. So great. We have to. We have to. Just something we can do, put in the budget each year, certain amount of money to go over the square. We've been a lot of taxpayer money that I heard. People are taxpayers. I'm a taxpayer too. I heard we spend a lot of taxpayer money and it was concerning the tax, you know. We all pay the tax. So I don't think the statute is a great thing, you know, it's something, might not be to you guys, but to me, it's quite good. I came up with those, I heard you guys talking, but you really don't know what you're talking about, some of these things. I know how I came up. So I'm not gonna say more about that, but the point is, I would like for this county manager, if it's of the sense of this vote, to come up, it would take you 1 month or 2 months, how long you need?
We'll move as quickly as we can, Mr. Chairman. We'll move as quickly as we can, Mr. Chairman. That's all I promise you. I can't tell you 1 month, I can't even tell you 2 months. To do this kind of work, it requires putting out an RFP, having an architect, submit qualifications, and the board approving the architect and moving through the process with the design. That's going to take the board giving priorities. If that's not what the board wants to do, the board needs to give priorities up front, and maybe we can move quicker. The board needs to give us some priorities for redesigning the square, whether it's setting a couple of tables and some chairs out there or creating a truly interactive space. So we just haven't got that yet.
Be favorable with the vote? Vote tonight.
Gentlemen, we have been, for those,
Sensitive, you know that, and got an answer, mine?
Commissioner Jeffers, I want to make a comment before the kind of motion is made. We have been talking about this. I was elected and was seated on this board the last November election. I've heard the gentleman on this board talking about it. It's been going on long before that. Now we're going to make another motion to move on down the road with another cost projection, whatever, on the redesign of the square. As Mr. McVeigh said earlier, I think we ought to have a motion of some type tonight to vote on whether or not we remove those monuments. We should give this crowd and the people of this county some kind of direction on what this board is thinking.
Yeah, I agree. I think we ought to. I agree with Commissioner Dixon on that. I think we need to go ahead and make a vote tonight on it.
Well, I make a motion that we have a vote on whether or not we want to move monuments off the square, and I'm asking for a second.
Is that a motion?
I make a motion that we do not remove the monuments from the town square.
I second it. I'll second that motion.
We have a motion on the floor, do not move the town square in a second. So we'll call for a vote. I'm used to calling by the roll. Ms. Goddard?
Aye.
You said aye?
He said.
Well, yeah, he made a motion to not move the monument, so it would be aye, wouldn't it?
All right. Mr. Dixon?
Aye.
Mr. Hall? No. Mr. Ostrander?
No. I mean,
You said no, right?
we're making a motion to not move the monument. So I guess,
What was your,
I don't want to move the monument.
you don't want to?
So he is
Yes.
I still say you need to find out the total cost before you push anybody. I can't make a rational, educated decision without knowing what that's gonna cost. So if I can't do that, if you can't tell me what that's gonna cost, I mean, I ain't gonna vote yes unless I know what it's costing.
Mr. Owen?
He
You
has,
still there?
no, he's left the meeting.
Mr. Owen, are you still there?
He has left the meeting.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, Jeff is going to play this. So the motion passed. The motion is carried. The motion is carried.
Abstention. Repeat the motion again, because I think if we.
Before you repeat it, I just want to know what the vote is, what?
I think what he's asking me to do is clarify what I'm actually made as a motion to Bill second. The motion I made was that we not remove the monuments from the town square. We don't have enough information. We don't know what that whole cost projection is going to be. And these people deserve some kind of answer from this board. My motion was that we not remove the monuments. I voted yes, Bill Carter voted yes, Mr. Hall voted no, Mr. Jeffers voted no, Mr. Ostriker voted yes, and it was back to you. I didn't understand.
All right, I don't want to move it till I know what it's gonna cost.
Okay, so the motion does.
So to clarify, did Commissioner McVeigh vote aye or nay on the motion?
You voted yea on the motion.
Okay. So can the clerk then read the tally on the motion, just so I'm clear?
What was his vote again?
Yes.
Mr. McVeigh, did you vote yes or no?
I voted to not move the monuments where I know the cost.
Okay, so
If I need to cost on the monument, I wouldn't have no problem. But until that cost comes in on that court square, no.
okay, so the count for the vote is 4 for not moving the monument and 2 against it.
Closed session.
I got it.
County manager update.
Commissioners, I have 2 quick updates for you. As you know, OSHA issued an emergency temporary standard requiring all employers with 100 or more employees to have all employees fully vaccinated against COVID-19 or submit to weekly COVID testing. The U.S. Court of Appeals Fifth Circuit issued a stay in this matter shortly after several suits were filed against the ETS. OSHA is expected to appeal the Fifth Circuit's decision to the Supreme Court, although when it will do so remains in question. There are numerous other challenges to the ETS that remain pending in other federal appeals courts. A multi-district panel is expected to consolidate those challenges into one court via a lottery conducted on November 16th, which is tomorrow. OSHA may choose to appeal the Fifth Circuit opinion now or wait for the lottery to go forward in hope that the other challenges are consolidated in a court that may issue a more favorable decision of the ETS. Until then, the ETS will remain stable. What I need the board to know is that we are prepared to move forward if the stay is lifted for some reason. We enforce many different OSHA standards, rules, and regulations on an ongoing basis. And from an administrative standpoint, we will continue to follow these developments and put in place the necessary policies and procedures only if necessary and to avoid fines that could be as large as $13,653 for each violation of the standard in each employee. Employers that willfully or repeatedly violate the standard can be fined up to $136,532. We do understand the board voted not to require mandatory vaccinations as a county policy. So that's my first update. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you. But just know we have the policies if the stay is lifted and we have to move forward. We have those policies that we're prepared to put in place. Number 2, this year for employee appreciation, we anticipate allowing employees an additional 1/2 day off on December 22nd. The same thing that was approved by the board last year in lieu of the employee appreciation lunch. The cost analysis of a 1/2 day off versus the luncheon, it's the same either way. We went through that last year. After polling department heads, almost all related to they and their employees would prefer the 1/2 day off this year due to the pandemic instead of a large county employee gathering, 250 plus people. So if without any large attentions from the board, we'll move forward with that. That's all I have, Commissioner.
Stop the few, Goddard, you have any comment? Goddard, you hear me? We'll move on. Ms. Nixon, you have a comment?
No, sir.
Oh, no. Rick? Stop.
I made my comment.
Thank you. And, next one is going to be the upcoming event, November 25th, 26th, Thanksgiving holiday, December the 6th, board commission meeting, down the park. Now we need a motion to go to closed session.
There is an upcoming event in the town for the tree lighting on December the 3rd. And various organizations in town, I believe that's Friday the 3rd, are having open houses, and there'll be vendors and stuff to do in the town at that time.
All right. Okay. Next one is going to be closed session.
Commissioners, I'll make a motion that we go into closed session to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, which privilege is hereby acknowledged in North Carolina General Statute 143-81811A3.
Second.
Moved by second, to go to closed session. All in favor, say aye. Roll call. We now have a motion to adjourn, nothing else.
Mr. Chairman, before we do that, can I just have one clarifying question? If the clerk, please, will read back the vote on the redistricting resolution, just for my own notes here, I missed the final tally there. So the motion was to approve the redistricting resolution as presented, and I just wanted to confirm the final tally.
It was 6-1.
Thank you very much.
Anything else? Need a motion to so moved. Second. Second, Rocky, 6, and all in favor saying aye. Aye. Leave that.